Once again, this video was voted for and chosen by you guys over on Twitter, so if not already, make sure you go over there and follow me. The @ will be on the screen. And look out for me tweeting new polls so that you can choose a video that you want to see. Hey, so as you can see by the title, these are going to be some ways to come out. Also some things to sort of remember and consider when you are going to come out. First things first, always wait until you're ready. Some people like to take a couple of weeks, a couple of months, years, even decades for some people, but it's always best to do it when you're ready and never let anyone or anything pressure you into doing it when you're not ready or prepared to. Try not to worry. I know it's easier said than done, but worrying doesn't change the outcome. All it's really going to do is make you more miserable. If you're constantly worrying about it, you'll put it off, and the longer you put it off, the more worry you're going to build up for it. It is a vicious cycle, and you might not come out for like 6+ years later. Trust me, I'd know. Remember that even if your family aren't the most accepting and supportive when you first come out, it might not always be that way. I've heard so many stories of people having seemingly the most unaccepting parents or family, like kicked out, disowned, not talking to them again, dead to them, all that horrible stuff, and then one day they get back into contact with them, they try and they're great about it. So no matter how hopeless things might seem, they can always get better. If you're not sure about where your family or the people that you're coming out to stand on LGBT people, try and gauge the situation by talking about trans or LGBT topics. Whether that's a YouTube video, whether that's a documentary or something you saw in the news, or just generally talking about something that you might have overheard somebody talking about, and just sort of see how they react to it. My advice would be to talk first and to talk positively about it. People tend to get on board with the first reaction and sort of be more open to that and more listening to that. So if you're talking about how that's normal and that's okay and why that's okay and why that's normal and why it's not this weird bad thing, they'll probably take it better than if you just openly say, so what do you think about this? You kind of have an opportunity to tell them why it's okay and get them to understand them actually go, oh yeah, that's actually not what I thought it was. This way you sort of gain an idea of how they feel towards LGBT topics and people, and you gain a little bit of an insight of how they'll react and if it's safe to come out to them. It's kind of like testing the waters. So here are a couple of ways that you could come out, and what I would recommend not doing, but again it is your choice after all. So first things first, as I always say, always recommend number one to have an open, honest conversation with the people closest to you about it. So for example, if you live at home, that'll probably be your parents, or if you live with a partner, it'll probably be them, and depending on family situations and things. In my opinion, this is always the best way to talk to somebody about something or tell someone something important, because it's more personal for starters, so it feels like you're really connecting with them when you're talking about it, and it means you can get out any questions there and then, have a discussion about it, and really connect and have a real conversation about it. Plus, it's more effective than, say, a text or something in writing, because you're actually there, they can see your face and they can see the emotion behind what you're saying. I would also advise having some information just sort of stored in the back of your head, so if you have any questions you can answer them quite effectively. And to make sure you emphasise the normality and the positive things about it. Try not to make it seem scary, because if you give people this vibe that it's a negative thing, that's how they're going to take it. If you think of it as a positive thing and like, well, I'm out, I'll be happier, I'll be able to be me, I won't be feeling like crap all the time, I won't pretend to be somebody else. That sounds a lot better than if you say, well, I feel depressed and I feel like this, and, you know, talking about sort of the bad things about being trans, think of the positives and talk about those first. I would not recommend to come out sort of like coming out on the States on Facebook, and I would recommend, if you can, to come out to people individually. So one by one, talk to that person and then talk to a different person and like sort of go through people. As much as you can. If you have family that far away, obviously you can't do that. Or if you have family you don't see very often, it might be easier to come out to the closest people to you at least, one by one. So I came out on Facebook as bisexual literally just a few days short of a whole year before I came out as trans. I'm pansexual, but for some reason I thought it would be easier to come out as bi. I only know that it was almost a year because I actually had a memory pop up on Facebook like a couple of days after I actually came out as trans to say that it'd been a year since I posted a status about coming out as bi. But I think it's a little bit different coming out as bi than it is coming out as trans, because your sexuality doesn't really affect anyone else outside of, oh, you like dudes instead of girls, or just knowing who you're into and maybe seeing you with a boyfriend instead of a girlfriend, or a girlfriend instead of a boyfriend, or whoever. Whereas coming out as trans does affect other people a lot more, because they're likely to start referring to you with different pronouns and a different name. It's a big adjustment period. Things tend to change when you come out because you start to present in the way that you want to present rather than the way that you were presenting, and there's a lot of things that happen that do affect the people around you. So I feel like coming out on Facebook to everybody on your friends list, some people that you might not hardly speak to, and then your closest family, I feel like it's more important to talk to the people closest to you first. And like, I came out on Facebook as bi because it wasn't a big deal, but when I came out as trans, I came out to my mum and dad first because they're the people closest to me, and they're the ones that I felt would definitely be affected by it more than anybody else. Some people do come out this way, and if you feel that that's the way that you need to come out and that's the easiest way to come out for you and there's not really other options, then that's completely up to you. But I do feel like it should be sort of a reserve option or a last resort. Don't get somebody else to come out for you, because they won't understand you and your situation as much as you understand yourself and how you're feeling. And when you get somebody else to relay a message, it might not come across exactly how you want it to come across. It'll be like Chinese whispers. You tell them one thing, and by the time it gets down to the person you want to get down to, it's changed, and it might sort of affect the way that it's received by that person as well. It should definitely come from you, and it's often a lot more appreciated as well. Another thing that a lot of people do, and does tend to be quite effective and can be for certain people, is writing a letter. Again, I do feel that this should be sort of a plan B to open honest conversation, because as I say, that is the best way to do things if you can. But some people will write a letter, and I think that is a good thing for if you have a certain idea of how you want things to come across. If you know that something will be taken better in a certain way, and if there's lots of information that you want to get out there and say like right there and then. It can be good because if you're sort of quite nervous and you struggle with speaking about how you're feeling, you can write it all down and you know you've got everything there and you can change it before you give it, whereas if you're talking, something comes out of your mouth, it's heard, you can't put it back in your mouth and make them want to hear it. One thing I will say is that sometimes giving somebody a letter trying to tell them something rather than just telling them there and then, some people don't like. I don't know how it makes much difference. I think I'd understand that it's obviously difficult for them to say it out loud and that's why they're giving a letter, but they still want to tell me and that's why they've done it. Or some people it can be received as sort of, I don't know, I guess disrespectful because you're stood right there but you're handing them a letter instead of just using your mouth. So in that case, or in the case that they might be sort of unaccepting or quite volatile with their emotions, it might be good to have them open it when you're not there. Like go out for the day, go out to your friends, stop over to your friends for the night or family members, because if you give them something, if you give them a letter and they're right there, their immediate response might not be their overall response, if that makes sense. So if you're right there, they can just let out their first thought straight away, and that could really upset you, and that could upset them, and that could upset everything that's happening. And that way, if you're out, it gives them time to 1, calm down, 2, reread over it a few times, really understand it and let it sink in, and 3, realise that you're not there, probably because you're worried about what their reaction will be. They'll have time to reflect on a letter themselves and work on their approach, rather than just immediately responding to their first thought. And lastly, a couple of things to remember after you come out. Always be patient with your family. You've got to think about it this way. For example, I came out at 17. So before I came out, for 17 years they'd known me as my birth name, they've been using female pronouns, she, her, and it was just a habit to call me those things, and it was just a habit to know me as that. Plus the fact that it's a big adjustment for family and friends, people that are around you a lot, because for all that time, they thought you were somebody that I suppose you're not. Because a lot of times when you're not out, you sort of pretend to be something you're not and trying to adjust and be the person that people expect you to be. So that can definitely be a lot of an adjustment period, and described by a lot of family members as a grieving process. Because it's like you're losing somebody, even though that wasn't really that person, that's the person that you knew, and then the real person's coming out, but it's kind of like a different person, if that makes sense. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, and a lot of people are very, very happy. Like my mum and dad were really happy that I was happy and finally being me, but they still went through that process of like a grieving process because they'd known birth name for so long, and then all of a sudden she disappeared, but really, that was me just hiding away inside of her. So know that things take a while to adjust to, and pronouns and things especially can still be tricky after a good while. For example, my nan and a few of my other family members still sometimes slip up on pronouns. Even though they pretty much never slip up on my name, the odd time they'll say she, and most of the time they'll correct themselves. Sometimes they don't realise that they said it, in which case I'll just sort of go, who's she? Just like a little reminder, not in a disrespectful way, just a little, who's she, and they'll go, oh, he, sorry, and then carry on. So if you do that and you reach an understanding where they're trying, but you can give little reminders if they do use the wrong pronouns or the wrong name, that is a good thing to do. And it's good to get to that point where you both understand, we use these ones, yes you'll slip up, it's fine, but I'll remind you, or when you realise, correct yourself. Also, find resources to help them to understand if they're struggling with anything. It'll be good for them to understand what you're going through, what that means, and what's involved in that. And lastly, answer questions. If your family or your friends have any questions about things and they're curious, try not to get mad if they're asking a lot of questions, because when they're asking questions, they're open to learning. They're open to you giving them answers and them learning something about it. And sometimes it can suck if you've got to answer loads and loads of questions, but education is the best thing ever. Because education leads to acceptance, and that's one of the things that everybody needs to understand. So if they have questions, please answer them. Obviously, make people aware that certain questions you might be uncomfortable with answering. Things about your body, or things that are quite personal to you, and just certain things that you would prefer not to answer. Just explain to them, I don't want to answer a question about these things. If they do ask, tell them that you're not comfortable answering that, but if they research it online, they are likely to find a better answer anyway, because you're not a dictionary and you're not Wikipedia, although Wikipedia is unreliable anyway, but still. But yeah, that will greatly help if you can answer questions that people have. And very, very, very last thing that I really want to reiterate is please never come out if it's not safe to, and always have a backup plan. So let's have somewhere to stay in case in the unfortunate event that you get kicked out. That's an accepting and supportive family member or friend. See if they can stay at their house if things blow up. Tell them that you plan on coming out, and make sure that you have that in place and that they know that you're coming out on this day, and if it goes wrong you'll be going to their house. Or wait until you can get away and be in your own space. The point of coming out generally is to be happier and to be more open and be able to be yourself. If you come out when it isn't safe, you'll be trapped in a possibly physical or emotionally abusive place. You'll be miserable, and that defeats the purpose of coming out. Always put your safety and well-being above everything. Alright, so that's everything that I want to cover. Hopefully some of these things might be helpful to you. Unfortunately, I can't comment on your exact situation because this is just a general tips and advice. Also, if you have any tips that I didn't mention, please leave a comment down below, because you could have thought of something amazing that I never would have thought of, and that thing could be the one thing that really helps somebody out. So please do it, leave a comment, it's worth it. If you enjoyed the video or you found it helpful at all, please give it a thumbs up. Also, subscribe down below to see more from me. I upload a new video every single Sunday, and hit that bell button to be notified when I upload a new video. Also, if you want to, you can follow my social media, they'll all be there. It's all Jay's Journey FDM. Feel free to DM me or message me on any of those things if you need advice, just want to chat, whatever. Also, if you do want specific advice on your situation, if you don't feel that these tips would be completely applicable to your situation, feel free to message me and I'll do my best to help you out. I can never tell you exactly what to do, and I never will, but I can try as best as I can to give you some advice and some things that might help. Stay safe and good luck if you are coming out. So thanks for watching, come on my journey, and hopefully I'll see you in the next video. Bye.